We're going to talk about the 3 Ps, one of the first things people learn in the Condor Approach. And to be perfectly honest, some people don't move past the 3 Ps their first year. If you just learn this skill to pause, pull back, and take a physical scan, the power's in the pause, the possibilities in the pause, the potentials in the pause. And in essence, what we're saying here with the 3 Ps is if you find yourself in a situation where you're getting triggered, you're reactive, you're going to go back into an argument, that kind of tripwire within yourself has been disrupted, we'll say, then that's where the opportunity for the 3 Ps to pause, pull back, and take a physical scan. I like to say that just like in a car ride before a road trip, before the next big path you're going to take, stop and take a pee-pee. Pause and pull back. Take a physical scan. Where are you feeling it in your body, whether you're in a conversation, an argument, or whatever. So it's just stop and take a pee-pee. And if you're feeling good, take a pee-pee-pee. Pause, pull back, physical scan. And if you're feeling really good, then you can stop and take a pee, 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 pee. Pause, pull back, physical scan before you proceed, and take the bird's eye view. In the nature of pause, pull back, physical scan, I remember the first time I called on the powers of the pee-pee.
When was that, Cole?
The first time down in the subway.
That was after we leave the chiropractic place.
Was it leaving the chiropractor? Yeah. Oh, so we're getting our backs cracked too?
Yep.
And we both had back spasms and all that stuff because you were just coming off of not being able to walk for however many months.
3 months.
And so yours had already been like 3 months. And then that's when I started having back spasms at Disneyland on that trip with my family because we had done all that research and I was putting ice on my back and doing the exercises we found from yours. So you have back situations. I had back situations. We're getting it cracked, stretched, massaged. And so we were down in the subway. So I remember at one of the ceremonies, we had a conversation where we were saying, look, if you ever don't want to be here, I will not chase you. But if you think you don't deserve it, I'll never let you go. So what's your take on that situation of what happened?
My take on the situation was there was a disagreement on something. We've never argued, but there was a disagreement and there was a lot of tension and you started to get huffy. And
I get huffy?
You got huffy. You started getting huffy.
But I'm calm.
No, you started to get huffy. You started to raise your voice and I dialed it down and it made you were inspired to get even more huffy. And then you decided to walk away. And as you were walking away, I grabbed your wrist and I stopped you from walking away. And I said, is this what you want?
What did I say?
You looked at me and you said, no. And I said, then let's go home.
I remember.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember. So we were towards the end of the platform. The train was pulling up. And one part of me just wanted to run. It was like, get out of here. But as I'm turning, there was the other part of me that was like, danger, Will Robinson. Don't do this. Ream, 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 ream. And as I turned to leave and to run, basically, you grabbed my wrist and I turned to look at you. And I knew because that conversation we had, you looked at me and you said, is this what you want? And I felt everything. If a human could glitch, I felt like I was feeling all the constructs kind of like of what I wanted, plus the past traumas, circumstances, situations. And the only thing I could muster was no. It was like a squeak. Yep. And so you took my hand and you said, then let's go home. And you took me on the train. That was super sexy.
Now you want me to grab your hand and tell you let's go more often?
What it was you were standing up for me. You were not going to let me ruin it. And when we got on the train, we sat down and you put your arm around me and you pulled me in and you cuddled me and comforted me.
I love you.
And didn't say anything, just held me.
Mm-hmm.
It was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So that moment of pause changes the game. And if there's nothing else anyone ever takes from anything we ever teach, the power of the 3Ps can be everything.
And when you program that into your nervous system, it becomes something that works on autopilot. You don't even have to think about it anymore. The pause becomes your tool. We live in a world of people that are highly reactive. And the pause allows you to be responsive, which brings your conscious mind into the space. So the reaction is usually a brain space. From my experience in life with myself and all the people that we've worked with, when we react, it's a programmed space that is deeply unconscious, subconscious body space. And when we take the pause and pull back, we allow ourselves to step out of the situation, and I guess we would downregulate the sympathetic, upregulate the parasympathetic so that we could actually think more clearly and expand our logic ceilings. And if you don't know about the logic ceiling, you need to come to the Condor Approach. Just saying. But so that's a thing in our world is people are very reactive, and those knee-jerk reactions get us into a lot of trouble, a lot of challenge. Now, whereas these knee-jerk reactions and these reactive spaces would save us if a tiger was chasing us or something like that.
Cars coming, get out of the way quickly.
That it's perfect in those instances. But when you're interacting with somebody that you love, that you care about,
You want to build with.
If your old traumas have taught you to be reactive, or you've adapted to your old traumas by being reactive, and that's the habit form, being reactive to people that you love can crush your relationship. It can crush an interaction. It can crush all kinds of stuff. And there are many people that we work with. When we were doing ceremonies and stuff, there were so many people that were just so reactive.
Yeah.
And they learned to be responsive. And doing that in a neuroplastic space is awesome. But when we learn to be responsive to something in an environment that we're trying to create with and be creative with, the most creative space that we can be in is a parasympathetic space. And that's where we rest, digest, we create, we dream, we have conversations like this. If I'm in a reactive space, it's going to be hard for me to process this information. And so when I pause, I pull back, I do a physical scan, I can be responsive and I can respond to the way my body is directing me. Is my body directing me to run away? Okay, cool. Can I override that? Because that may be a past, like when you were getting ready to run on the subway, you might have run away from old situations in the past. That might have been your old technique, right? Your old way of keeping yourself safe. And I'm not putting that down, but in the situation with me, that wasn't necessary. And so if we are using old things with new situations and it doesn't work, we have dysfunction. And this is what people would call a dysregulated nervous system. For me, it's not dysregulated. It's regulated for an old dynamic.
Yeah.
And so when we pause and we pull back and we do that physical scan, we can actually see where we are in the sensation space and an emotional space. And then we can determine what we want to do. That's where we apply the 4 Ns. What is my intention with this feeling? All right, I'm doing an intake. The pause, pull back, physical scan is an intake, right?
Where am I? Yeah.
Where am I? How am I? What is happening? What's going on around me?
I think that step 1 is what's happening within my own body. What does my body want to do? Because sometimes, like, I struggled for a long time to know how I feel. Like, if someone said, how are you feeling? It was easier for me to be, what am I sensing? Like the sensations in my body. And over time, I learned those sensations were attached to emotions. But there was a compartmentalization that had happened that if someone said, how are you feeling? I could give the answer I felt was appropriate for the behavior, but that didn't necessarily resonate for me. Sensation, if someone said, what are you experiencing in your body right now? What does your body want to do? Does it want to run? Does it feel hot? Where are you feeling it? Is how I learned like that emotional component actually, because there was at whatever point in my life that I refused to feel, it came out as physical pain in my body. So it's where do I feel versus how are you feeling or what emotions are you experiencing? Because I could say, oh, I'm feeling shut down, so maybe I'm sad, but I could not relate to the emotion. I related to the sensation in my body of I feel a flutter in my chest, or I feel my throat closing off, or I feel my lower back getting tight, which as I started to uncover and pause and pull back and do those physical scans, the game changer was I started to notice the earlier signs when I wasn't feeling safe, the earlier signs that I was starting to get activated. Because you mentioned earlier about the brain and how this reactivity in the brain, I would love for you to explain a little bit more, like what's the difference when you say brain intelligence versus mind intelligence, to break that down for anyone listening, as far as like this reactivity and the habits of the brain and how you usually explain how those systems kind of work.
Yeah, so it's a very complex interaction of brain and mind. And mind has yet to be explained to me in a really concrete way, because the mind is not a very concrete thing. It's a very elusive, very nebulous dynamic that we are involved in, that from my vantage point is not local to the human body. It interacts with and connects with the human body, and we all have a branch of the mind, but the mind is connected to all of consciousness. And so if consciousness is the way we connect with everything, we each have an individual branch of consciousness, and that is our individual minds. And so my mind, or the mind that's proximal to me, or that interacts directly with this body, interfaces with my brain. My brain is the operating system for, and the hardware for this physical body that I live in. And so it can operate without the mind, devoid of the mind.
Say more about that.
Yeah. So if a tiger's coming, if I'm out in Serengeti, or no,
Yeah, that's not lions.
That's lions. If I'm in the jungle and a tiger,
If I'm in the Rocky Mountains and there's a bear,
if I'm in the Serengeti and a lion is coming running at me, for me to say, well, the computational aspects of
the
my
velocity
running,
of the running,
of the running, and then the poundage pressure of the jaw.
if the gazelle can run at 4 knots in a 3rd-degree wind,
I'll be dead. And so that's the mind it functions to make sense of the world, of the reality of whatever is happening in these bodies, out these bodies, around these bodies.
So it's the part that's in consideration, you would almost say, of more things simultaneously, like to act in consideration versus in reactivity?
Yes. And it builds on all of these things. And so it's constantly moving and changing and mutating based on the dynamics that are happening around in us and around us all the time, even on an unconscious level. So the body is always functioning for really basic things: survival, the interaction in the 3D plane, reproduction, energy cycle creation with the food and the nutrients that we have, how to interact with our gut biome. All of these things are functions of the brain. And so the brain is very much a here and now type of situation. It functions in the now. Now, the memories, there are two ways that we, from the studies that I've done, there are two ways that we interface with memory. Memory is in the mind, and it's Akashic records and all of these other types
like consciousness.
It's in the consciousness space. And then we have memories that are built into the body, so that the body can recall things that have happened in the past to keep itself safe, and to know the flavors of food, so that it recognizes carbohydrates.
Well, and poisons were built that way.
But it goes beyond the current life. It goes in our DNA structure and from our ancestry. So all of these things are built into the body, so that the body knows how to survive in the world and interact in the world. And so this is where we can be reactive, because the body is very present, very moment of now circumstance. The thing that we have is the mind that allows us to project into the future and to look back into the past. That's something that the mind has, that the mind utilizes. The brain uses past as data to move forward in the moment of now.
And more survival based, maybe.
Survival and thrival, right?
Yeah.
The brain searches for pleasure, which is a thrival space. We thrive in pleasure. We thrive in ecstasy and joy. We thrive in these spaces. So the brain knows how to look for those things, but it's based off of past interactions. It's based on if a baby comes out and the mother touches the baby and the baby derives pleasure, it starts to learn how to lean into getting pleasure from the mother touching it, or cooing, or whatever it gets an interaction from the mother. That's brain work.
So it's like the habitual brain work would be, if the people that are afraid of bees because they got stung when they were little, their body reacts when something comes around them buzzing, because it learned in the past, whether because someone told them or they experienced the bee sting. So it's the reactivity. versus the mind part could maybe see that, oh, 20 feet away, I'm seeing a gathering of bees and I can make a conscious decision how I want to move forward towards the bees versus a bee comes by your face and some people lose their mind. They go completely reactive and swiping and all of that stuff, which is more of a body. They're not thinking, oh my gosh, this bee's going to sting me consciously. It's more that it's like some part, it's programmed more in the body,
It's a survival
the
thing.
brain.
It's a survival thing. And human beings have a natural propensity to stay away from insects.
Or snakes or dog bites
Mm-hmm.
if someone was bit in the past. And if you think about the human nature, we had to remember things that like made us sick because from a primal perspective, you have to remember what plants made you sick, didn't give you life. It's a very functional thing. So it's not like we want it to go away, that primal instinctual intelligence. But it's like, for me, instincts is the habits and programs in the body that's more of like the animal survival on the third dimensional plane. And intuition feels like it guides me towards things a little bit quieter, and it requires presence to be responsive and tune into that intuition, which feels like a gentler pulling towards versus the more reactivity of that brain habit, keep you alive, sustaining thing.
Yeah. And when you look at human beings, the first 7 years of life are very critical. It's where we build our initial personalities that interface with the mind. Most children do things without morals, without anything. They're just doing it. They go with what's very right now. They don't understand morals. They don't understand what's right or what's wrong. We program them with the rationality of what is right and wrong. And when the mind comes on, the mind starts to come online after around age 4, right? 3, 4. That's where the mind starts to come online and a kid starts to make sense of what's right, what's wrong. How do I get this? How do I manipulate that? They start to formulate ways to interface with the mind. They've moved beyond the space where they need to survive. They need to learn how to crawl and stand up and grab food for themselves. And so now they're in a developmental space of the brain to allow the mind in more. The body will not allow the mind in to disrupt the formulation of the human body at the beginning, right? If the body needs to learn how to survive, it will formulate itself around survival. This is why kids who are beaten and kids who are abused, when they develop these hypervigilant spaces throughout their lives, or they learn how to hide all the time. This is a brain function, and it's highly functional. And so when we talk about people having these problems and why I don't understand why people are so shut down or they're so introverted, these are things that people developed from their early childhood. This is brain development. Now, when we get older and we start to say, why am I like this? That's the mind coming online, trying to rationalize what's going on with the body and why the body's doing it. If it doesn't associate with other people, all of these complex ways of interfacing and rationalizing everything is mind process. And so when we look at the body, when we look at the brain, the brain/body, because the brain is part of the body, and we look at the mind, there are two different spaces that interface with one another. And this is part of the integration of the human existence, is understanding how to interface the mind and the body with great intention. And so when we do pause, we pull back, we pause, right? Oh my gosh, I'm being reactive, right? Like I feel like I'm going to be reactive. To have the conscious awareness that you are being reactive,
That you're in it.
That's a skill from the gate. So if that's something that you can do, if you're listening to this and that's something that you can do, please give yourself some credit.
It's the most important one.
for being able to say, oh, yo, I'm triggered right now.
Yeah.
Or receive somebody else saying, hey, I noticed something shifted in you. And for you to be able to pause in that space and just be with it.
Just hold it for
just
a second.
Be with it.
Yeah.
You don't have to change it. Just be with it and recognize that you are in a space that may be some old programming from eons ago, from your early life or from your parents' past. All of these things are the space where when we pause and stop being reactive, we can make serious changes in how we flow. And this, now I'm not saying if a dog's coming, pause, pull back.
Take a physical scan.
A foaming mouth dog is coming at you. Take a physical scan and then ask the dog, please stop. No, let your body get you to
keep
safety.
you safe. Yeah.
Don't get in the way. But this is why when people, there are times in my childhood when I grew up in the 80s in New York City, and it was rough, man. Like, we had gang wars and stuff in New York, and then we had crack. Like, it was crazy. And so I was terrified to go to school. But there were times, and I was small when I was a kid. I was tiny. I didn't sprout up until my junior year of high school. I grew 5 inches. It was crazy. And people would try to take money from me and take my lunchbox and all this stuff all the time. And there were times where people would come and mess with me, and the next thing I knew, I was standing on top of somebody, some kid that was on the floor, bleeding or crying or something, and I didn't know what happened. And so another person would be like, "Man, you just kicked that guy's ass." And I'd be like, "I didn't do anything." And I had to had some snap into place moments in my psychedelic experiences around these things where I completely dissociated. And if I didn't dissociate and I tried to rationalize my way through it, I might have got killed. I might have had my stuff taken. All kinds of stuff could have happened. But this is the thing, y'all. When the body takes over, the body will take over. If something is, and if it's not necessary, the body doesn't need to take over. We can move into a rational space. So that's where this tool comes into play. And it's such a great gift for us to be able to to detach from old habits and old mechanisms and really lean into integrating the mind and body complex.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I remember another time when we were living at Hanaro's, and when we were getting into some conversation, and it was literally one of only maybe like 3 in 11 years, just big energy moments. And we had made the agreement that if we ever needed to pause and pull back, that could include physically stepping back in creating as much space between each other as we needed to be able to stay in the room. Because we had agreed we wanted to communicate through things. So what would that take? We call it a what happens when. Instead of pretending in a new relationship and just riding on the wave of, oh, it's great, we don't need to do anything. We were like, okay, I know me and I know past situations I've been in.
Yep.
And I can tell you, I might not know what I want, but I know what I don't want and what things I don't want to repeat. And we started there. We didn't start by building what we wanted. We would sit and talk and be like, so what didn't work for you in your past relationship? We'd talk through it and be like, okay, so how do we not do that? And then as we got more understanding together, it was like, okay, so what happens when I, Cole, get loud or want to run? What do we do if Ta feels X, Y, and Z? And so we had this what happens when plan, which is where the 3 Ps came from. And so we were at Hanaro's, we get in this big energy, and so we paused and pulled back, and I think we were like 20 feet away from each other.
15 feet. It was like 15 feet, and it was about money.
Yeah, and it was as far as we could be within Hanaro's house. We love you, Hanaro. I don't know if you listen to this, but if you do, thank you, because we got to live in his house for a month.
When we first came to Austin.
Yeah, when we first came to Austin. So we're in Hanaro's, and I'm way by like the stairs, and Ta's on the other side of the room, or it was flipped, whichever, but we're as far as we can be within the space itself and be in dialogue. And it was money. And that was one of our realizations, that we had done all this work in spirituality, in relationship, in freedom, in working for ourselves, but we still had some heavy stuff around money.
Still got some stuff around money.
Yes, we do.
Come on now.
Yes, we do.
Let's be honest.
But that was literally pause, pull back. We made an agreement that create as much physical space as we need to for our bodies to be able to tolerate staying in the room. And then we'd have to talk slow. And we slowed down. Because for you, me getting loud, I came out of a relationship before Ta with an Israeli that if you're not loud, you're not heard. So I learned to be loud to communicate. The problem was getting with Ta. That was not a functional way to relate or be heard.
Based off of my past historical data.
Correct. And so he had always told me, look, your anger is welcome, but if you project it at me or point it at me, I'm out. Like, that doesn't work. So we're going to have to find something else. And so our something else was, we'll keep creating physical space. Think about how often before a fight out on the streets or wherever people start stepping in towards each other, you're condensing that tantrum energy. And so you're actually creating the fight. There's a point that it's going to break. So if that's the case, do the opposite of that. Create more space if you're not trying to punch that person in the face. And we created the physical space. So it's the pause, pull back, and then just breathe for a minute until we could answer. We might spend 5 minutes not saying anything, but it's not a cold shoulder shutdown. It's taking responsibility to self regulate for the purpose of communicating, of being heard, of getting back into connection and play and fun. Because when we got together, we said, let's ride it till the wheels fall off. But anytime a wheel got shaky, we just fixed the wheel because it was too fun to just let the wheel fall off on a freeway. Like, we're going somewhere. This is fun. Let's stay in this. And so I think that anyone listening, step one is, can you get your partner or friends to, do you remember on Pirates of the Caribbean? Oh, parlay. They can evoke the power to parlay and talk to the captain. To me, that's what the 3 Ps are, is if you talk to friends and family and instead be like, I would like to evoke the power of the 3 Ps, pause. Can we pause? Pull back, take a little bit of space. Because for me, and even with other relationships, and even on coaching calls, to be able to tell someone at any point, all you have to do is say pause. And then we're going to pull back from what we're doing. You take a physical scan. Where do you feel it? What are you experiencing? And then we can proceed from there.
Or parlay.
Parlay! That was my, whatever her name is, Keira Knightley impression. I invoke the power of the parlay. Take me to the captain. I don't know why that's how I feel the 3 Ps are. Pause. That's what I'm going to start saying.
Pause.
So for you with the 3 Ps, like, how else would you describe, let's say you had 2 minutes in an elevator and you were going to explain the 3 Ps to someone and what it serves or how they could use it. How would you break down the way someone could utilize the 3 Ps in 2 minutes? Give me a situation, a thought that they're having, and then how the action of the 3 Ps would work.
So you're asking me for an elevator pitch, or you're asking me about something that would happen in an elevator?
Either way.
Let's say you get on an elevator and it's in an old building and there's 7 people in the elevator and there's a 10 people maximum, and the elevator stops and you're in the elevator and it's hot and it just completely stops and shuts down, and somebody is in there wigging out, banging on the door saying that they need to get out. The next person starts to panic and they start to bang on the door and they want to get out. And everybody's screaming, and how can this happen? One person is like, I got an interview. I can't believe I'm going to be late. I'm losing this. The other person who's screaming is like, I got to get to my kid. Another person's like, I'm claustrophobic. And you're standing in the corner and you're the only person who has already paused and pulled back. What could you do? Hey, everybody, can we all just hold on for a second and take a breath? Is that possible? And then we all take a breath together. Cool. Anybody want to share what they're experiencing right now in their bodies? Let's pull back, see where we are. Okay. I know where I am. I'm in an elevator. Where are you? I'm in an elevator and I got to get out of here. Okay, cool. Right. What are you experiencing in your body? Right. My heart's beating. Do you want your heart to beat that fast? No. Okay. What could we do to change that? Right. We're stuck in an elevator. We're here. Okay, cool. Is everybody feeling like they're safe? No, I'm not feeling safe. Okay, what would make you feel safe? Let's pause. Let's pull back from the situation. I need to call my family. Okay. Does your phone work? No. Okay. There's nothing that we can do at the moment. So what else can we do to support you in feeling safe right now? And this is how we go around the entire elevator.
What if everyone's bugging? They don't care or want your support. How could you use the 3 Ps for yourself amidst the chaos?
Yeah, I back myself into a corner. I pause, I pull back, I physical scan, and I check in to make sure that I'm not being reactive, because in the past I have been reactive and I might have guffoed somebody up and put them in a headlock, put them in a sleeper hold, and told them to calm the F down. I make sure that I don't revert to old past situations and let people know, hey, listen, your panic and everything is welcome here. I'm just letting you know that I will not be hit and I will not be screamed at. So I want to let you know that. But my intention is to be safe in here and for y'all to be safe as well. And we can figure something out together if you want, but I'm going to be in this corner while you enact your feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And anytime somebody gets close to me, I can say, hey, I'm just reminding, pause again. What am I feeling? Am I reactive? And let people just keep reminding people. Just keep reminding and be responsive, not reactive. Because I'm not a small person. And if I get activated and I completely dissociate, I might hurt somebody. And I don't want to do that. And I might get hurt myself. I don't want that to happen either. And so to be able to be the person in the room who is constantly bringing himself back in, the other bodies will lean into it after a while. But it's not on my clock. Depending on how somebody else's nervous system has been regulated over the course of their lives or has been patterned over the course of their lives, I don't know how long it's going to take a person to tone down or to tune down. So I have to keep myself in a space where I am breathing and accentuating how my chest is rising and falling very slowly so that the other bodies in the room will get pulled into that space.
Yeah, I think so often they'll try something like the 3Ps and say it didn't work because they tried at a Thanksgiving to tell their family to, hey, can we just pause? And sometimes the 3Ps is a silent practice that you start because you can't learn this, or you can do whatever you want, but it's probably not going to be very effective if you hear it on just the podcast, or you downloaded one of the free downloads and you hear pause, pull back, physical scan, and then you go to this family event like Thanksgiving where you're telling everybody, all right, y'all, we're not getting in a fight and we're going to be a family. And so if it gets rowdy in here, I'm just going to say pause. And then we're all going to pause and pull back. Okay. Then we're going to breathe for a minute. A lot of people think that's malarkey. Okay. If they've never done it before, they're not going to take you seriously. And so initially the 3Ps can be a private, quiet, personal practice of not getting sucked into other people's drama to where, oh, you notice it's after 9 o'clock and they just cracked open another bottle of wine, or you've got the one cousin that always starts stuff coming in, or whatever.
Wait, are we at my... What's going on?
So the pause pullback is that moment when you decide to not participate and go down this rabbit hole of reactivity with the rest of your family or people at your job or whatever. And it's something that if you continue to practice, you will change the people around you, because they can't, if it's just you and one other person, they can't fight with themselves. They'll try, but it's almost like when people initially see that you're pausing and pulling back and not getting sucked in, it's almost like they work harder to push more buttons to see if they can get you to crack, and not even like consciously.
Sometimes it is consciously.
No, sometimes it's consciously. I'm saying that sometimes it's not even conscious that they're pushing and probing to. The thing is, in their body, that reactivity is what they know, which feels safer than some version of you that's not participating in the trauma or drama or situation. And so it feels safer for you to act the way that they know you to act. Because when someone goes for a psychedelic journey or they come back from a transformational experience, whether it's Tony Robbins or a silent meditation, and you're different,
approach.
Especially the Condor approach, because you can actually explain it. There's times that people will say, oh, you think you're better than everyone now. Oh, you're all brand new. Oh, you think you're brand new, huh? Oh, yeah, you went and did this, whatever. And I think that when we can remember that this is about you first, don't allow yourself to get sucked in. Every time I see it as every time I react, it's they have power over me. And which that was a lot of how I lived my life, was to prove other people wrong for a really long time. And so the idea of anyone having any control over me to make me reactive drove me to a lot of my self-exploration, because I could only compartmentalize and repress it and oppress it for so long. I had to actually get tools and strategies to not carry it, to be effective, because when I stripped everything down, what I wanted was to be heard and respected or appreciated, or at least find the places that I could be, which means I'd have to learn how to communicate even if I'm pushing on edges, because I'm constantly putting myself around people that aren't like me, which means it also can step on new triggers or things I've forgotten about because it's outside of my comfort zone.
This brings up thoughts for me around the reactive space that happens or has happened in my family's situations and dynamics. And I found that when I pause and I pull back, and it's not a silent thing, it's, hey, listen, I need to pause for a second for me so that I can stay in this conversation. Is that okay with you? And if the other person says no, cool, I'm going to do it anyway.
Yeah.
I'm going to do it anyway. And I'm going to
I was
pause.
more informing you.
I'm going to pause so that I can clear my thoughts and check in with my body. And when I do that, when I've done that, the other person usually waits. And what they're doing is they're pausing. And they're probably going to check in with their body, whether it's consciously or unconsciously, because I'm doing it. We're empathetic beings as human beings. And the empathetic, I really feel like I've been called to doing like a class on the empathetic override. And this is something that Gil taught me about being on stage. Shout out to Gil Ahamadou. Taught me about being on stage and breathing people into the space with me and getting that empathetic override. You override another person's body to get them to actually calm down by watching yours and bringing your voice down lower into a low space and slowing down. That's where you pause and you pull back from the pausing and pulling back doesn't just mean proximity. It's also energetically pulling back on your speed, pulling back on the amount of words that you're using, pulling back on the tone and really getting low in your tone and bringing it down from the head, pulling it back from the head and into the heart. That's another frame of reference to you as well.
That's how I like to imagine it, is what you just said. Like dropping the tone so that the resonance is in my chest, because it feels like when I slow down and allow it to, like, the more awareness you bring to when you're really in your head, you're talking higher and twice the speed. And that's usually when someone's reactive. They've gone to the filing cabinet of memories in their mind, and they're just like building a case, getting the data, getting the information. And when you pause, pull back, and you're doing a physical scan in your body, and you're looking at the whole picture of who am I? Who do I want to be? Who have I been? And what does that future, how does that future version of me want to react in this situation? Or how do I want to respond in this situation that puts me in alignment with who I'm growing into being, who I'm practicing being, who I'm evolving into? Like, how does that future self act in this situation? And for me, it's like if I knew that I was totally healed and I know how much I love you and appreciate you, then how do I act in this situation knowing that to be true for me? Versus seeing you as an enemy or someone from the past, because all that reactivity, it's not just from an action one person did. There's a sequence to it. And it's not usually the person in front of you. They are reminding you of a time you weren't in control, that you felt hurt, that you felt betrayed or alone. That's why it's such a very charged thing. Because even in an adult relationship, if someone goes outside of the relationship or has something like that happen, the person that might be feeling the hurt or betrayal, that's still coming from somewhere else. They either felt betrayed in the past. They said, oh, this is what men do, or this is what women do, or this is what people on their second marriage, or whatever stories are attached to it. And I love what Paul Mark always says, that if there's a charge, you're not done with it yet. And whatever's bringing it up, if we pause and pull back and look at what is our intention together, do an inventory of where we are, where we want to go, are we really going to blow up this entire thing for this moment? For me, the answer has always been absolutely not. Am I feeling hurt? Yes. Am I feeling maybe not heard? Yes. Am I, whatever those experiences happening within me? And when I can slow down, I already know you want to hear me. I already know you want me to feel safe, connected, and fulfilled. So the pause and pull back is also, I feel like, us working as a team to self-regulate so that we can come back together and communicate effectively. And I watch it with parents and kids too, that when the parent can pause and not react to, say, a tantrum and regulate, it takes practice. That's why I love ice baths and cold exposure, because I feel like my body reacts to the cold and I can practice regulating, not to fight the cold, not to stay in no matter what, but reach a point where I can relax into it and see that there's not a threat. And it's something that we do now with bees and bugs around. The fact that a bee will come around now, if I feel my senses go up at all, my sole goal is to go back to a regulated, calm state, and they almost always just fly away after that. And it's fascinating when you look at the instincts of animals. Bees and hornets, because they are, this is something I'm making up. I have no evidence. I've not studied bees or hornets. But my assumptions with insect that colonizes the way that it does and is in community the way that it is, they can sense our stress hormones. So if I'm getting more reactive, the likelihood that other being that is built to pay attention to the environment to keep the hive safe, keep the other beings in its colony safe, it's going to be more reactive to that hormone, to that stress energy. Because that's why a lot of beekeepers don't even have to wear any of that gear because they know how to work with bees. And I'm assuming those are the same people that know how to regulate their nervous system so that they're not a threat to the hive.
Yeah, they know how to adjust their nervous system for it. It's the same thing with dogs. It's the same thing with any kind of anything in nature.
Mm-hmm.
The animals can smell very keenly, and bees are no different. So I believe there are studies on bees being able to dive into frequency spaces. It's not even just hormones and pheromones. Pheromones are hormones, right? It's the frequency of the person and how they're vibrating based off of their hormone patterns and their hormone mixes. There's so much that we could dive into with all of this stuff around pause, pull back, physical scan. It's such an amazing tool set. And most of our coaches lean all the way into this. Have you pause, pull back, physical scan.
Yeah.
When we did surveys on stuff, this was probably the most popular tool. I never knew that there was so much power in the pause. And it's pause, pull back, physical scan, proceed, and play. Are you playing with the environment? How are you playing? How are you interacting with the environment is a very important consideration with all the work that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And being in the Condor Approach and having this over and over again, like we constantly bring people back to this over and over again so that it becomes something that's in the forefront of their brains. And when we're programming, it's not just a mental thing, it's a physiological program that we're actually creating in the nervous system. Physiological program that we're creating in the nervous system. And by doing it over and over again, over and over again, over and over again, the body gets used to it. And so it becomes a habit. And they say in marketing, it takes 7 times before you start to recognize something on auto. You can recognize it on autopilot. Being able to bring this back to people over and over again so that they see it 7 times and then they start interacting with it over a 30-day period so that it starts to sink in, a 90-day period where it starts to become a habit form, and in a year-long situation where it gets baked in, and then it becomes a personality trait. Like part of our personality is to pause and pull back now.
Totally.
It's part of our personality, and it's built into our nervous systems. It's not just a mental concept. This is a physical situation
it's a practice.
It's a physical situation that we're creating, though. And
this is our new habit by choice, especially in a psychedelic experience too. People react all the time. Like we've been in ceremonies where someone got hurt and we were participants. We weren't facilitating. And that person getting hurt can send reactivity through the entire container. And it was our ability to regulate that made everyone else know it was okay and safe. Mm-hmm. If we would have panicked, and now again, we were participants, but both of us have different programmings that in crisis we get in action and radically clear for different reasons. You have all your nursing background plus growing up in Brooklyn. I have my own of, we'll say, hypervigilance that when the ish hits the fan, we're the ones that you want around because everything's going to get handled, taken care of, and super clear. And so this superpower is required for you to be able to even have access to your brain. So when you always watch the news, when you always listen to things that are very scary and at the end of the world, all of those fear things that keep your body hypervigilant and activated means you can't think clearly. Oh. You cannot make the same conscious decisions because you are making reactive decisions which have other consequences.
It's based on a physiological response. If you sit in front of the TV 6 hours a day and you're constantly watching people get killed, murder things, people embezzling money, your body becomes reactive to this stuff. And so you learn how to react to it on autopilot by doing it over and over again. It's a physiological habit. People are like, I don't understand why I feel this way. I don't understand why
I
I
feel
keep doing this.
hopeless.
I totally understand why you feel this way.
Yeah.
It makes plenty of sense to me. And this is not something that for me that is a 100% therapy space. Therapy dives into very mental spaces where people go and they sit on a couch and they learn to trust their therapist into a space where they finally are able to relax and get into a mind space. And they get into the mind space and they start juggling concepts back and forth with the therapist, when a lot of these things are physiological programs that we can choose to program, we can choose to reprogram ourselves. And that's where the pause, the pull back in the physical scan is so tremendously important, is because we can reprogram from choice.
Yes.
And that's where it's okay, I'm pausing, I'm pulling back, I'm doing a physical scan. How do I want to proceed? Do I want to go back to the old stuff and the old habit forms? Do I want to create a new habit form? Do I want to explore something totally different that's a one-time deal? What is it that I want to do? And when we do, this is part of why the Condor Approach is so important, is because the people that have come to the Condor Approach are making new habits that they decide on.
Yes.
New
With
habits,
support.
new habits of how they think about themselves, how they feel about themselves, how they interact with their food, how they interact with their family members. This is why the Condor Approach is so important. Yep. It's because we're teaching people how to have a sovereign space of habit form creation in the self.
Yeah, totally. And during the live event, we're teaching people how to use the 3 Ps when they feel activated, when they react to someone's sexuality, to their past, to their circumstance, to their traumas, to their relationship dynamics, to their partner that's in the space. The pause and pullback isn't only in conversation. If I'm walking through the house and I feel a sharp pain, say in my side or my knee, I pause and pull back in my mind. What did I just think? What just crossed my mind? What was that flash? Because why did it happen in that moment? And now I've attuned it so much that a good chunk of the time, I can recall the memory that just flashed through. We have thousands of thoughts coming through in every single moment. And those fleeting thoughts that just cross through, I started to see how those were impacting my physical health as well. The old injury that suddenly acted up or whatever. It's not just happenstance. It's consequence. Cone sequence with sequence. The sequence of thoughts causes me to perform different actions, and those actions are what create the state that I'm in, which means the more awareness I can have to those thoughts and how those thoughts make me feel and how those feelings drive my activity and what I decide to do or don't or not do, I start to see, wow, that pain in my knee, I just had the thought, I don't want to go to this thing today. And it's my right leg, which is stepping into, moving towards masculine structure. And so the 3 Ps is also pause, pull back in that moment where suddenly I'm getting a headache. Why? Have I hydrated? Have I eaten? Am I working on things that are giving me a headache? Is there someone in my sphere that is giving me a headache? Whatever. I can try all these things on. And for anyone listening, it's a lot to learn. It is. And when you're in psychedelic or master teacher in plant or animal form or fungi form, you can create new habits faster because of that neuroplastic state. So if you're in a ceremony and you hear someone screaming and you feel a reaction in your body, that's pause, pull back. Can you release yourself from the reactivity of that scream? Because you know that someone else has got it. Someone's in charge. It's okay. Instead of you going to rescue. Most of what people are doing is trying to change the emotions of another person to make themselves feel better. So if someone in the room is angry, then the partner might be people pleasing because they're uncomfortable with the anger.
Yep. Can't change people's emotions, fam.
No.
Can't do it.
You can only change your reaction to their state and their emotions.
That's behavior.
That's behavior. And when I look at how often I was entering into, say, if I was at work and the boss was in a bad mood, how that impacted my behavior. If the boss was in a good mood, how that impacted my behavior. How in past relationships, if I wasn't in a good place, they try to help, it doesn't quote unquote work, then they're in a bad place because I'm in a bad place, and vice versa. And it's something I'm so grateful in our relationship, Ta, is that we're continually bringing it back around and reminding each other, my happiness is not your responsibility. And you'll come and you'll ask me if there's anything that I need. And if I tell you no, then you are free to
Deuces.
yeah, you're free to move about the cabin of your life and go do something. But I watch people bold face lie and be like, no, I don't want you to be upset if I am. But then if their partner leaves, I watch them get upset, and because it wasn't really true. But then that's that person's stuff. If I look at you and say, no, I'm good, and so you leave and I'm mad, that's my stuff.
That is responsibility.
Yep, that's my responsibility.
I'm not getting involved.
Yep, exactly. And vice versa. Like, for both of us, we know it doesn't serve the other person for you to get in the pool of despair with me, and it doesn't help if you're in a rough place for me to get in with you. If anything else, you having fun and play helps me get out of mine sooner, in the reminders, in the playfulness. And so it's something that, if you're listening right now, we're going to have a workbook for you for this. So go download it. It can walk you through some practical ways to apply the 3 Ps. Just get the link down below. Go through it, because it's not something that you read and then think you're just going to come up with something that works in the moment. It takes some premeditation. Like, what happens when you get reactive with your kids, you get reactive with your parents? How can you get them on board? I love that Lauren, one of our master coaches up in the Northwest, she's taught her kids it, so they know the power of the Ps: pause, pull back, and physical scan. That allows her and her children to have a way to pause, learn how to regulate their emotions, and they can help remind their mom, like, hey, Mom, can we pause? Let's do the Ps. That's what her 6-year-old said. It's so cute. The Ps.
And with that, take a pause, y'all. Pull back, do a physical scan.
And leave a review.
Feel into your body. And that feeling is telling you to sign up for the next Condor Approach.
Facts.
Sign up for the next Condor Approach.
Yeah, y'all. You're gonna have the link down. I was gonna say downstairs in the comments. You're gonna have a link to the next Condor Approach Live. Come pop in for 3 days, y'all. Come in, learn some of these things with people that you can practice and flub and not get it right, that give you grace and are still holding you to some accountability, because these concepts you can learn by listening. You can download the workbook. You can keep doing all the stuff. But until you come in community and practice the skill and see how other people apply it and see how it's impacted their life, you're not going to embody it the same way.
So come to the Condor Approach, y'all.
Come.
CondorApproach.com.
Come, they told me, pa-rum-pa-pum-pum.
Pause, pull back, and physical scan. Pum.
That's the one I wanted.
I love you so much. Thanks, y'all.
We love y'all. Until next time, be easy, be free. This is Ta and Cole with T. Deuces.
Peace.